Hi everyone. So this is just a quick refresher on what we did this morning and what we'll be looking for you to do for Friday this week. Again, pretty quick, as you know, we sort of mostly spent our time going over concepts because since I'm not making you guys learn how to do these calculations by hand, actually executing them in Microsoft Excel is pretty quick. So just to sort of go over where the data came from, the USDA Market News website is the place that I pulled that data from. And again, as I mentioned in class, it's a really, really, really fantastic source of data. You can see here that it's got separate markets for cotton, tobacco, livestock, meat and dairy, and fruits and vegetables and specialty crops. And that's the one that we're going to be looking at just because that's one we're going to look at. So I'm just going to show you here how we get to the markets data portal and how you actually go about pulling down the data set. So I'm just selecting this here. I'm going to say, yes, I want to look at terminal market stuff, and it sort of has this progressive reveal on the form. I'm going to choose New York. I'm going to ask you guys to choose New York, I guess. It doesn't really matter. I mean, again, we're really just looking for you guys to sort of perform these calculations and make some basic assessments. But I'm going to go ahead and just choose apples. Obviously, this is what we used in class. You will be using different ones. So I just add that and I hit go, and it's then going to open up another section of the form, which is asking for the dates. I'm just going to choose the 18th to the 25th. So a week-long period. Again, you go for a week-long period. If you do it later in the week, that's obviously fine. And then just choose run. And this will give you an option for a couple of different data types. You can see that we have we have our option of either 37 or more result pages, or we can choose an Excel file. And so if you recall from class, we had one issue with this. So I'll just call this apples, and I'm going to save it on my desktop. We had one issue, which is that the format of Excel that this saves in is actually not really very compatible with OpenRefine. And OpenRefine is free and open source, so just look it up and go ahead and install it. If you are on an Apple computer, you may have to change some permissions in your system preferences. If you go to System Preferences, you'll find that one of the options on a Mac has to do with where you can install programs from. I think it's under security. I'm not sure exactly where this is, but anyway, you can always use it on the lab computers. And if you run into trouble, installing OpenRefine in a way that functions, just post on Lore, and I'll see if we can track that down. But basically, you have to have permission to install like applications from the web or something, and it's just a change you have to make on your computer preferences. So okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open this, as indeed it complains even when I download a file. So I'm going to go ahead and open this file, and again, just kind of quickly run through the functions that we looked at. So again, we have this sort of series of dependencies where, so let me just get this into scale here. I'm going to bump up the magnification a bit. And the thing that we're looking at here is, again, I just use the high price, so you all should use the high price. Feel free to go ahead and use the high price column. So I can insert a column here, which is where I'm going to sort of, quote unquote, do my work. Now, one of the important things, of course, is that I do want to, in general, I want to sort my data. It's handy to have it sorted properly. Again, this is how I like to sort it. You guys should feel free to post other ways to get these tasks done to Lore. Everyone has a different way of doing it. So if I go to data and I choose sort, and again, I'm going to choose this little arrow up here and choose custom sort. And then from here I can, it doesn't seem to like my column names anymore. So let's see what maybe because I inserted one already. So J is my high price column. See, column J, high price. So I'm going to go to column J, and I'm going to say smallest to largest. And oh darn it, look at that. I lost my headers. Probably because K did not have a header once I added it. All right, let's try that again. So if I select all my data, I just went Apple A there. And if I do a sort now, my guess is that it will, no, it still doesn't like that. Let's see how we do. Still losing my headers. That is weird. Anyway, headers. Not sure what I did differently this time. So I'm now going to just sloppily, I'm going to cut this and insert it back at the top. All right, we're in business. And so insert back in this thing. So again, just sort of reminding you what these formulas are. So in the case where we have a normal distribution, we can reasonably apply standard deviation, mean is going to be our central measure of central tendency. The standard deviation is going to be our measure of spread. And then we have the option of looking at something like a normal score. So again, when I calculate, mean is actually called average in Excel, and I can go ahead, as we saw, I can actually just select that entire column. If I want to get the standard deviation, again, I'm going to go for the standard deviation with the .s, the sample standard deviation, because in point of fact, this is a sample, right? It isn't the entire population. The difference in these formulas is actually basically, I mean, mathematically, that in the case of a population, you divide by n, i.e. the total number of readings. In the case of a sample, you divide by n minus 1. And so it just ends up being a little bit bigger, kind of leaving leeway for the fact that there is error when you don't have the entire population considered. So this is my mean and standard deviation. In fact, I am going to label these. So I'm going to say mean. Yeah, it's not going to like that, actually. I'm just going to say mean, standard, dev. And again, how you guys do this labeling is up to you. What's important is that someone else should be able to follow it, right? So you don't even have to do it in this file. In fact, I highly recommend creating a separate text file and kind of just creating a series of steps and numbering your steps and saying step 1, I did this, step 2, I did that, naming the columns. Highlighting is a really handy way to kind of draw attention to the relevant data points. Or cells. So I have my mean and my standard deviation. I can now, I can also calculate the median. And you can see there that when I hit return, I didn't quite get what I needed, so I can actually come up here and then do the selection. So I get my median, and of course I can also get my quartiles, right? And the quartile is going to take a couple of arguments because it needs to know not only, and you can see if you get this, and I realize not all of you are going to get this, but sometimes it comes up with this array quart, right? So it's showing you what the parameters will be. So in this case, again, my array is going to be my column of data, and the quartile that I want first is quartile 1, right? So the median is dividing the data set in half, the middle reading, and then you take the bottom half and take the middle reading of that, and then you take the top half and take the middle reading of that. So the middle reading of the bottom half is Q1, or the first quartile mark. The middle reading of the top half is Q3, the third quartile mark. And obviously, if you've divided it into 4 pieces and you're looking at the middle 2 pieces, well, that's going to be 50% of your data points, which is the sort of the measure of spread that we look at with a skewed distribution. So now I choose 3. So if I have 20 and 30 as, so in this case I now have median, this is Q1, this is Q3, and of course one of the things that I want to know, and we notice that Q1 and Q3 are both positions, so they're discovered by their position within the sorted data set, right? We sort from low to high, and then we find that position, but they correspond to actual data values, right? The data value of 20, the data value of 30, which means that our interquartile range, our so-called interquartile range, or IQR, is the numerical difference between these two. So don't need math to see that that's going to be 10. Excuse me. So the IQR is 10. And then the other thing that we looked at is this, the sort of extreme values. If we look at the absolute low and the absolute high sort of bounds of data values, what we're going to find is it's going to be 1.5. The formula is going to be to take this Q1 value, multiply the IQR times 1.5, and subtract that value from Q1. And then we do the same thing, except we added on to Q3. So obviously we have some nice round numbers here. I don't really have to do the math, but I can say 1.5 times, sorry, it's going to be, so the calculation I'm expressing here is Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR, and that of course is going to be 5, and then in this case Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR is going to be 45. Okay, so that's kind of all of our calculations, with the exception of looking at the normal score. And again, the normal score is going to be, you're going to have one normal score for each individual entry in your data file, right? So every 15, the value 15 has a single normal score, even though it appears many times, and that is going to be that's going to be expressed as standardized. You can see it takes 3 arguments. X refers to the particular reading. So in our case, we're choosing, I'm arbitrarily choosing 15 here by selecting the cell. The mean, of course, I've already calculated, and then the standard deviation. Excuse me. So for the value 15, the normal score here is negative 1.248. So the thing that we don't know at this point is whether or not this data set is actually normal. To do that, we're going to take these calculations and then sort of compare them to the percentage distribution that we find in the data set when we open it in Google Refine. So we'll come back in a few minutes and do that. See you in a moment.